Hi, friends. Hello. Good morning. My name is Ani Pomo. I am the resident director. I'm the director and resident teacher of Songtsen Gampo, Buddhist Center of Cleveland. We are located in Lakewood, Ohio, but of course, because of the pandemic, now we do everything online. So today we are going to be talking about this is the fourth in the series of the 6 paramitas. You can look at earlier videos for that. Today's paramita is called Diligence or Joyful Effort. We'll talk about that in a minute. There are links below to everything that you need. The book that we're using today is called Words of My Perfect Teacher. There's a link to where to get it if you want. And also link to the closing prayers that we're going to do at the end. So if you want to join us for that and you don't have them already, you can find the link for those below, also for our website. Really great to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already. That will keep you up to date on everything that we are doing. So before we begin, just kind of settle in a little bit, get your mind and body in the same place. Then we want to begin with what's called our bodhicitta motivation. So bodhicitta is the Sanskrit word. It means awakened mind-heart. And so mind and heart together. And what that signifies is the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So anything positive that we do, particularly anything we have to do with studying and practicing the Dharma, we want to begin with that motivation. For whatever reason we came here this morning, we just try to expand that out to include all beings. If you want to just think, may the time we spend this morning studying and practicing benefit not only myself, but others as well. Okay. And then we want to bring to mind our precious teachers. In our case, we have the great good fortune of having Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, the Tuku Pema Wangyal Rinpoche, and Taklung Mato Rinpoche as our 3 main teachers. If you look at the thumbnail for today, you will see a picture of Kyabche Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, who is also one of my teachers and our teacher's teacher. And he really exemplifies joyful effort. So again, we'll be talking about that in a minute. But we think about these lamas and the entire lineage leading all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni, because it really puts us in touch with their own wisdom and compassion. And we have a great sense of gratitude towards them for taking the Bodhisattva vow, continuing to return to cyclic existence to benefit us and all beings. And then we also think of them with a great deal of respect because, for their realization, which we understand is so much greater at the present moment than our own realization. So with that, we will begin today's subject. So it's normally translated when we talk about the 6 paramitas or the 6 perfections. It's this word, the Tibetan word for diligence, is normally translated as diligence, but the actual literal translation of it is joyful effort. So that's quite a big difference, isn't it? When we think about diligence in the English language, it sort of feels quite heavy and sort of furrowed brow and, diligence, right? It feels quite kind of heavy, right? But when you think about joyful effort, it's clear that there's effort involved, but there's also joy. Why the joy? Because we understand the result. What the result is going to be of our practice is enlightenment, is total freedom, as Tuku Rinpoche says, total freedom from suffering for ourselves and others. So it's something that we really want to do, despite whatever work might be involved in that, whatever effort might be involved in that. So if you think about that in ordinary terms, we actually do that very often in our life. Like for people who have children, for example, they understand and experience a great deal of responsibility and work and sacrifice that they give for their children. But they love their children. They want children, right? They see the value in having children. So they're willing to accept the work that comes with that. If, the same thing applies for getting a degree, traveling, learning a new language, and all of that kind of thing, right? So when we do those things, there's a certain amount of joy. We see that we know the goal is something we want to do, and so we're willing to do that. One of my favorite examples of this is the joy we take, like if you're having people over for dinner who are very dear to you, and let's say you haven't seen them for a while, so you want to make a really nice dinner, right? Well, all the effort involved in that, right? You got to clean the house, but you do it happily because you're like, my friends are coming over, you have to go shopping, figure out what you're going to eat, buy those ingredients, do the cooking, set the table, right? All of that stuff. It takes effort, but we do it with joy. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through this. We are going to use the word diligence a lot because it is how it is translated, but keep that like if you want joyful diligence. Okay, all right. So, excuse me, I'm just pulling up my notes here. So there's three kinds of joyful effort or diligence. The first is called armor-like diligence. The second is called diligence in action. And the third is called diligence that cannot be stopped. Okay, so we'll take those one by one. So armor-like joyful effort or diligence means nothing can stop you from starting. Okay, so the example they give is, sometimes when we hear about great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or great masters, we can get kind of discouraged, right? We can think like, oh, they're so wonderful, and I could never get there, so I'm not going to start, right? And they say, no, they got there by doing the very practice and study that you're doing right now. So of course you can get there. It's just going to take some time. They got there through joyful diligence. They got there through practicing all the time. Okay. So right now we have everything we need to practice. Okay. We have the Dharma. We have a precious human life. So we should be willing to accept the hardships or the burdens that come with that without caring too much for our own comfort, just like parents do, just like we do when we go to school, just like we do, in many other situations. So any big goal that we have in life includes some form of diligence and effort, right? It's just that now we are doing our best to apply that to our Dharma practice. Okay, so the second is diligence or joyful effort in action. So this one, Trungpa Rinpoche says, this one means nothing can interrupt what you are doing. Okay, so in this one, the teachers advise us to avoid procrastination. All right. You must avoid, it says in this text, you must avoid wasting a whole human lifetime forever planning to practice. This happens. This happens, you guys. It really does. We, I'll go into a little bit more. So it says you can waste your whole life planning to practice. So we say, oh, I'll practice tomorrow. Today I have all these things to do, right? Or I'll practice. Sometimes people say that. I'll practice when I get old. Like right now, I have family and I have this and I have a job and I have the other thing. And who has time? But the teachers advise us, impermanence is real. Death and impermanence is real. Death can come at any time. No matter how young we are, no matter how old we are, we have to be aware that death is really at the door, and that every moment we're taking one more step closer to the end of our life, right? End of your life, it's not like we stay in one place and then, we never move forward, we never age, we never get sick, all of that, and then suddenly death comes out of the sky. We're moving in that direction moment by moment, actually millisecond by millisecond, right? So we have to be aware that this happens, and that our situation as it is right now, being relatively healthy, relatively sane, right, isn't going to last forever. This precious human life, this ability to practice, is not going to last forever, okay? So we have to understand that, and understand we have an amazing opportunity, and it's not going to last forever. In the text, it says, don't wait another second to practice. Do something about it immediately. Practice like your hair is on fire, okay? I really like that example. As if you think of it, if your hair is on fire, you're not going to sit there with your hair burning and be like, oh, maybe I'll take care of it tomorrow, maybe the next day. I have a lot to do. No, you just put out the fire, as soon as possible, right? So we have to think of it in that term, in those terms, like this is urgent. Practicing is really important. In fact, it's the most important thing we will do, right? So if you don't think this way, we'll never find the time. Never. Worldly activities, it says, will follow one after the other endlessly, like ripples on the water. This is true, right? I'm one of those people who keeps a to-do list, a running to-do list on my phone, little check marks. All right, that to-do list never ends. It never ends. As soon as I check off something, there's another thing to add. If I waited until I did everything I need to do on that to-do list before I practiced, I would never practice. So they say those things only stop when we put them down, when we let them go. It's not like we have to, let them go forever, right? It's just that we put them aside. Let's say that, okay? We put them aside for the moment so that we can practice. And what many people find is that if they do their practice, especially first thing in the morning, which tends to be the easiest, it doesn't mean you can only practice at that time, but for most people, they find that the easiest. If that's not the case for you, find a time when it is the easiest for you, right? Maybe your lunch hour, maybe when you come home from work, but I don't know how many people are actually coming home from work. Let's say stop working before dinner, right? Before you make dinner, then there's a little time there typically. Well, take an hour, or before you go to bed, right? But anyway, when people do that in the morning, what they find is that actually it's very strange. I find the same. The whole day kind of opens up, and you feel like you actually have more time. I encourage you to look at that and see if that's true for you. But a lot of people do find that's true. Whereas if they don't practice in the morning, the whole day seems kind of scrinched, and more rushed. So I went and we were discussing it recently, and it's like we don't really know why that is. We sort of think maybe because we're more relaxed somehow, or more like concentrated, and so more efficient than we would be, than we are when we don't practice. But anyway, so what happens sometimes also is, and again, this is my own experience, this is other people's experience that I know, as soon as we sit down to practice, if we even get that far, right, all the things we need to do take on an exaggerated importance, okay? Even things we don't like to do suddenly become important. Like let's say that we hate to vacuum. Soon as we sit, we're going to do our practice. Suddenly we think, oh my gosh, I really have to vacuum. It's so crazy. I really have to vacuum. Oh my gosh. And we jump up and we vacuum. Or before we sat down to practice, we just didn't want to answer any emails. We're just like, ugh, it's the last thing I want to do. But as soon as we sit down, suddenly it becomes the most important thing in the world to answer those emails. Okay. That's the kind of thing we have to just be patient with ourselves, but we have to be firm and just say, no, no, I can do all that stuff later. Right now, I'm going to practice. Okay. Otherwise, the entire day is frittered away. This has also happened to me. I want to sit down and practice, and then I think, oh, I really have to answer just this one email. And as soon as I finish that, I will sit down. Then I sit at the computer and I answer that email. And then I open Facebook and then I answer 4 more emails. And then I think, oh, yeah, I do have to practice, but I want to start my laundry first. So I start my laundry. Oh, and now it's lunchtime, on and on and on and on till you get to the end of the day and you haven't done a single second of practice. We have to be strong and we have to be determined. Just put those things aside. Procrastinate on those things, but not on your practice. Okay. Also, sometimes, like, if it's not these outer things, sometimes it's inner things, right? We have a lot of what's called nam-tok in Tibetan. It just means like discursive thoughts. So we'll sit down and all these thoughts will start to come up, Either it's, I have to do this, I have to do that. Or it's, oh, I had an argument with my friend the other day and, I should have said this, I should have said that, blah, 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 right? Rinpoche said to us when I was in retreat, he said, if that happens when you want to practice, just talk to those things like they're a friend and just say, I understand. And I know you want attention and I would totally give you that attention, but after I practice, okay? Right now I have to practice. So will you just go away for the moment? I know it sounds ridiculous at the moment. I thought this is really crazy, but I did it, I did it. I just tried it, and it really works. It really works, so try it if that's the situation for you. Okay, so the third type is diligence or joyful effort that cannot be stopped. All right. So Rinpoche says this means nothing can stop you from attaining your goal. In this case, enlightenment. All right. So the text says, do not be satisfied with having done a little practice or study. So we should never feel like, oh, I know everything now. I've done all the practice I need to do. I don't need to practice anymore. They say no. We should really vow to practice as long as we live, right? Determined, it says, determined to keep your efforts going with all the constant powers of a great river until you reach Buddhahood, all right? So if you think about a really strong, big river, right? It doesn't stop. It just keeps going. It keeps going. The water keeps flowing. Okay. So we should practice like that. And then it says, try to make greater and greater efforts each day. So I like this also because there's an inherent understanding in that we're not going to go from like never practicing to practicing 24 hours a day, like overnight, right? But little by little, we try to practice a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. All right. I often talk about the approach on this path needs to have an attitude that is more like yoga than like football. Okay. So what I mean by that is if you think about football or these kind of things, it's like no pain, no gain, right? So there's this very sort of aggressive approach and we want like everything at once and we want to sort of fight with ourselves and this kind of thing. Okay. That's not the approach that's going to help you in the Dharma. Even when we're talking about something like diligence or joyful effort, right? What's going to help us in this case is more of a yoga approach. So I know many people have taken at least a few yoga classes. So if you think about that approach, when the yoga teacher asks you to take a certain posture, she doesn't, let's say that it's a leaning forward posture. She doesn't come up behind each person and force them down. She says, hey, go as far as you can until you feel any kind of resistance. And then take a breath and go a little bit further, bit by bit. And then you can eventually, over some time, you can take, put your head all the way on the floor, for example. Okay. So that kind of approach, gentle on one hand, sort of progressing bit by bit, but not just stopping, because we can't do it the first time we try. Do you understand? Okay. Okay. So in the text, it says, generally speaking, whether you attain Buddhahood or not depends solely on your diligence. So that's kind of a big statement, isn't it? What does that mean? Just solely on our diligence, right? Well, what they say here is like, if you are an intelligent person, you really have a good grasp of the teachings, right? But you don't practice, or you have no diligence, you cannot attain enlightenment. But if you are not so intelligent, let's say, or not so educated in the Dharma, but you have a lot of diligence, you will attain enlightenment before that person who has years and years of study behind them. Okay. Best scenario, of course, is if you have a good understanding of the teachings and diligence. Okay. We do our best with both of those things. But we're never going to attain enlightenment by just laying around or watching videos of Dharma teachers on YouTube, or, reading books, or just hanging around the Lama, right? The only way that we can attain Buddhahood or enlightenment is by practicing. And by practicing as often as we can, as long as we can, with as much bodhicitta as we can, with as much authentic practice as we can. Okay. So by authentic practice, I mean we don't pretend to practice. Okay. We do it as sincerely as we can, as well as we can, to the best of our ability. So what do I mean by pretending to practice? Okay, so pretending to practice is like we sit and let's say that we have some mantras to recite. So we have our nice mala, so I'll show you. So this is a mala, in case you don't know. So we have our nice mala, and we're going through, and we're looking at our phone at the same time. Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. That's not practicing. That's pretending to practice. Okay. Let's say that we don't go that far. Okay. Let's say that we're just practicing, but we're like at the same time, reminiscing. But Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. Oh, I wonder what I'm going to do for dinner. Oh, I remember my first boyfriend. Right? Okay, we're saying the mantra, but like we're not really there. All right. Whether it's meditation, mantra recitation, whatever kind of practice we're doing. So we have to practice in an authentic way and not pretend. All right. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. So it says, make every effort to practice with the 3 kinds of diligence. So the other point here, which is quite important, it says, make your mind like a good bowstring, neither too loose nor too tight. When you hear about the life of the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, I can't remember the name of this person, but anyway, one of the students of the Buddha was, where he ordained, he was a famous Veena player. So a Veena is a bit like a guitar or a lute. So anyway, it has strings. So this Veena player was saying, I just can't do this meditation thing. I'm really tense. Like I'm so tense. And I just so hard for me. We might relate to that, right? And so the Buddha said, when you were playing the veena, what happened if the strings were too tight? And the veena player said, well, there isn't a good sound that comes from it. Then the Buddha said, well, what happens if the strings are too loose? So this is a situation where we don't practice at all, or we're very, lazy about our practice, or this kind of thing. That's the strings being too loose, right? So the Buddha said to this veena player, what happens if those strings are too loose? And the veena player said, I don't get any sound at all. And the Buddha said, that's right. So what happens if the strings are neither too tight nor too loose? And the player said, well, then I get a good sound and I can really play. And the Buddha said, just so. That's how your mind should be when you practice. So too tight is kind of like expecting perfection from ourselves, being overly concentrated, which is a thing, and just being like, I have to meditate, which is, as you can see, it's counterproductive. Being too loose is, as I said, just laying around, not really trying, thinking, it's good enough. That's too loose. So we have to be in between those. We have to have a good balance, okay? On one hand, we want to make an effort, but not be too tense about it. On the other hand, there also has to be that sense of gentleness, just like I was talking about earlier about the yoga approach, right? There has to be some sense of spaciousness, understanding of where we are at that moment, and just kind of like, okay, I made some mistakes. I'll do better tomorrow. It's okay, or, I couldn't find any time today because my life at the moment is really overwhelming, and we do that thing that I said earlier, where it's like we didn't practice at all the whole day, rather than beating ourselves up over it. We just treat ourselves gently and say, that really wasn't a good thing. I really don't want to do that anymore. Tomorrow I'm going to practice first thing in the morning, no matter what. Rather than I'm a terrible person, I'm a bad practitioner, I just learned about this today, and tomorrow I did exactly that, or today, okay? This kind of beating ourselves up doesn't work. It just doesn't work, What happens if we do that is we have more resistance to practicing, because now we've associated practice with something negative, with feeling bad about ourselves, with feeling guilty. And then we don't want to practice anymore, So it does something to us mentally, even energetically. Whereas if we're gentle with ourselves, if we're kind to ourselves, then next day we're like ready to practice. No problem. Okay. And don't believe me on that. Check it for yourself. See what happens, between these two approaches. Between actually the four things, if you think about it, right? Being too tense, see what happens with your mind and your practice. Being too loose, see what happens with your mind and your practice. Okay? Being too strict, being too lax, see what happens. And try to keep that balance. Okay? So then it says, it will get you nowhere to practice sporadically only when you have time. All right. So what does that mean? That really refers to the thing I talked about earlier. Yeah. If we look for when we feel like we have time, we will never find the time. All right. Because there will always be something else to do. I have to do the dishes. I have to do my taxes. I have to do whatever. Okay. I have to vacuum. My favorite thing, vacuuming. I got to do it. There'll always be something else. All right. So that means, we practice for 5 minutes on Monday and not at all on Tuesday, and maybe half an hour on Wednesday, and then, again, 15 minutes on Thursday, and not at all until 2 weeks down the road. That's sporadic practice. All right. We want to try well, not even try. We want to do it. We want to practice every single day. All right. And I really, really encourage you to do that. Even if one day we, let's say that we're shooting to practice an hour a day, and, out of 7 days of the week, there's 2 days that we can't manage that and we only get in 5 minutes. It's better to do that. It's better to practice 5 minutes every day than to not practice at all during the week and then practice a lot on the weekend. Okay, we need to keep that momentum. We need to keep that regularity. We need to practice not just no matter what else we have to do, but also however we feel. All right. So we're not always going to be inspired to practice. We're not always going to be in that space that's like, oh, practice is the best. Oh my God, I love it so much. I just want to sit and do my practice. Okay. That doesn't happen that often. All right. So what Songtsen Rinpoche said, which I find, so helpful and really, really true, is that because we're not always inspired to practice, because we don't always feel groovy and just wanting to practice, he said that's one of the main reasons why we study. Because in those moments when we don't feel inspired to practice, we need the intellectual support for why we want to practice. And that study and that sort of logical support is what's going to get us through when there are times that we don't want to practice. Okay? All right. So that's all I have to say on that. So now we're going to meditate. Okay? We're going to start with just mindfulness of breathing practice. Okay? Which I'm going to explain because I don't know who's here. So I have to explain it. I'm sorry if you are bored with hearing this explanation, but you'll get through it. Or you can just start practicing while I explain. That's also fine. So what this practice, mindfulness of breathing, does is the purpose of it is to practice awareness. All right. Meditation, the word for meditation in Tibetan is gom. And gom means to become familiar with, to get used to. All right. So in mindfulness of breathing practice, what are we becoming familiar with? What are we getting used to? Okay. We are getting familiar with what the mind feels like when it is aware and present, and what the mind feels like, or what the state of mind of distraction is. Okay. So when we start to become familiar with it, we get very good at recognizing like when we're distracted and bringing the mind back. That's pretty much the whole practice. Is we try to keep awareness of the breath and we get distracted and we bring the mind back. Then we're aware for a while, then we get distracted and we bring the mind back. That is the practice. That's why it's called practice. If we expect to maintain perfect concentration the entire time that we're practicing as beginners like us, that's too tight, right? Just like I was saying before. So we need to be aware of our breath. We're trying to be aware of our breath, but in a very relaxed way, in a very spacious and open way, not in a tight way. Okay. So what we do is we take this posture, which I'll explain in a second. Then we bring our awareness to the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So that's like the physical things that we do, okay? And then what we're doing with our mind is, first, we're not trying to stop the thoughts, okay? That's very important. A lot of people have that misunderstanding about Buddhist meditation. We're not trying to stop thinking, okay? We're just trying to not engage and get distracted by those thoughts, all right? So let's say what we're doing is we just allow a thought to arise, dwell. It will disappear on its own. It will be replaced by another that will dwell for a moment and disappear on its own, and in this sort of constant stream of thoughts. Okay. So what we're trying to do is just let that happen without judging it, without engaging in it, without getting distracted by it. Okay. But as beginners, there's always going to be a moment, almost always, sometimes we get lucky, but where we do get distracted. As soon as we realize that we got distracted from awareness of the breath, then in a very, again, kind, spacious way, we just bring the mind back to the breath. All right. So Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche says that when we become aware that we're distracted, that's a victory. That's exactly the thing we're trying to develop. So the mistake a lot of people make is that when they realize they got distracted, instead of feeling like, oh, cool, my natural awareness arose, I realized I got distracted, I'm going to bring the mind back. Yay, me, right? Instead, they think, oh, I got distracted again. Oh, I'm the worst. Oh my God, this is so hard. Yeah, I got distracted every fight. That's not going to help you. Okay? It's really not going to help you. Please trust me on that. All right? It's not going to help you. So what you want to do is just do that with a really easy way. Okay? A very forgiving and spacious way. Just bring the mind back. Okay? All right, so let's get into it. So what we're going to do is first take the posture of meditation. All right, so if you're in a chair, just put your feet flat on the floor. Okay, if you're sitting on the floor, just cross your legs in whatever way is comfortable for you. Okay, so other than that, all the instructions for whether you're sitting in a chair or sitting on the floor are exactly the same. All right, so your hand should be in one of three positions, either palms down on your knees or your thighs, your palms up, resting one on top of the other like that, in your lap, okay? Or with your fingers on top of each other and your thumbs touching like that, kind of like you're holding an egg, goose egg, all right? So whichever way you find most comfortable is fine, okay? Then your arms are relaxed. So you're not holding them out, you're not squeezing them in, just relaxed. The back is straight. This is the most important thing, okay, that your spine is straight. So just kind of straighten it without too much. It's not like you're in the army, okay? Just straighten it. The back of the neck is also straight, so you're just going to tuck your chin in just a little bit, not like this, okay? Just, you notice you don't want to be sitting like this, okay? Just so your head is straight, your back of your neck is straight. So your mouth is closed but relaxed, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing through the nose. Ideally, your eyes should be open. All right, so but looking down about halfway. Right, so if you look straight ahead and then you just lower your eyes halfway, that'll be a good, relaxed, lowered gaze. If you find that really uncomfortable, which some people do at the beginning, or if they're used to meditating with their eyes closed, you can close your eyes. But in our tradition, it's really, really our teachers emphasize to keep the eyes open. All right, and there's reasons for that. One of the main reasons is just so we don't fall asleep, or we don't fall into a kind of half sleep that a lot of people mistake for meditation, but it's really kind of you're just going to sleep, but you're not all the way there yet. Okay, and it affects different parts of the brain too. So try to do that if you can. So that's it for the posture. That's our posture. Then we bring our attention to the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So we're focusing sort of at the end of the nose. Okay, but not to the exclusion of everything else. So we might be aware of my dog barking outside, or your heating coming on, or some pain that you have. You just include everything in your mandala. You're not trying to shut out anything, but you're mainly trying to focus on that sensation. Okay, then we let the thoughts come and go as I described. All right, so I'm going to ring the gong to start, and then also ring the gong to finish. Okay? All right. Now please begin to count the breaths if you like. Counting helps us to realize more quickly if we've gotten distracted because we've lost count, right? So what you want to do is count either every in-breath or every out-breath up to a total of 10 complete breaths. If you do lose count, just like I was saying earlier, as soon as you realize that, that's your natural awareness arising, the very thing we're trying to develop. So, terrific. Okay, just bring the mind back. Start again at 1. If you get to 10, no big deal. Come back, start again at 1. If you go beyond 10, it's just another form of distraction. So as soon as you realize that you've gone beyond 10, again, no big deal. Bring your mind back, start again at 1. So please begin that now. Bring your mind back to the breath. Also check your posture so that you aren't leaning or slouching. Your body should be as relaxed as possible while maintaining the posture. Your mind should also be as relaxed as possible while doing your best to maintain awareness of the breath, consistent awareness with a light touch. Okay. Sorry about my dog. Hope it wasn't too distracting. But sometimes that kind of thing can really wake us up, and we should learn to practice with some noise. Actually, it's quite helpful. Very rarely do we get, even in retreat in the woods, very rarely do we get the opportunity to practice without any kind of noise. So I hope it woke you up and didn't disturb you. All right, so now we're going to do the closing prayers. If you don't want to join us, that's perfectly fine. If you do, excuse me, as I said, there's links in the description, or a link in the description called Closing Prayers, so you can pull that up if you like and join us. So the reason that we say these certain, the reason that we use Tibetan, the long life prayers we're going to do only in Tibetan. The other prayers, the first one we'll do English and Tibetan. The next three we do just in English. So the reason we do that is because according to Gupema Wangyo Rinpoche, these prayers were written by enlightened beings. Many of them have been said recited for centuries. So the words themselves have power. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't know what we're saying. That's why there's English translation, so that we know exactly what we're saying. But we do recite them in Tibetan for this reason. All right, so we'll start with the first page, the long life prayers. The first is for the Dalai Lama. Kanri wawe koe shinkan su pendante wa malu juene chenre siwan tenzing gam soi shape gyaga ba tu tengyu shi. Om swasti jigme rabjam se chin lap ki ken se du ka lun sin du dan chok Sabsunishi doje ta tenchin tender men pe jin le ta shin sho. Om swasti tse la gyam se chin lap ten chu le lun sin tak se gyu chu pema wang sang sum na dre gyao po ta ten e lap chen ten de she ten tai ge sho. Lama kunkam sangpo sowa deb, chotu kuse ringwa sowa deb, trine tashin gepa sowa deb, lama dandre wa me pa chingi lo. Okay, next page. So I want to explain this one before we say it. So the first line here is, by this merit may all attain omniscience. So merit is like positive, virtuous action creates merit, which is kind of like good karma or positive energy and this kind of thing. So normally, according to the law of cause and effect, anything we do in that vein will come back to us as some kind of happiness for ourselves. So with this prayer, what we're doing is we're sharing that merit with all sentient beings. So we're kind of just extending it out, so it doesn't only benefit us, but it benefits all beings. And then the word omniscience here is a synonym for full enlightenment. May defeat the enemy wrongdoing. So that refers again to the law of cause and effect. So it's our own wrongdoing that is the real so-called enemy, and that really creates a lot of suffering for us. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So these four things are considered by the Buddha the four main sufferings in the human realm. So old age, sickness, and death, really obvious how that's a suffering. But why is birth a suffering? Because it's so painful, typically, not always, of course, but typically so painful for both the mother and the baby. It's also life-threatening for both the mother and the baby. And then the fact that the baby has taken birth again in samsara is, kind of suffering, right? From the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. So cyclic existence is this round of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death that we have all been on since beginningless time, okay? We're born, we die, take another form, die, on and on. So that's really considered a great deal of suffering. Sorry for the dog. He's going to come in as soon as we're done. It's called an ocean because it's very wide and very vast, right? Cyclic existence, and quite deep, And then may I free all beings. So we begin with bodhicitta, we end with bodhicitta, okay? So that one we say once in English, once in Tibetan, and as I said, the other three just in English. So By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonam di tam che sikpani, tobne ne pedranam pam che shing, ke gana chi balon trupai, si pet sole droa shu. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be. And where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Now we're going to say the 100-syllable mantra, which is the mantra of Vajrasattva. And this is meant just to kind of purify any sort of mistakes we may have made in this session. I'll say it slowly because I'm assuming there's going to be some people who don't know it. Those of you who do know it, please say it 3 times, but we're going to say it slowly once. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopatishta Drido Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sawasidi Me Prayatsa Sawakama Sutsame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawatata Gata Vajramame Munsa Vajribhava Maha Samaya Sattva. Okay, so now we have some time for question and answer. There's the chat. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask it, no matter what it is, maybe about the practice, maybe about what we discussed earlier, or anything else having to do with Buddhism or the Buddhist path. So I'll just wait a short moment. So if you have a question, you need to put it in there right away. Okay. All right. Okay, I don't see any questions. So what we're going to do is we do meet here every Sunday, except for the last Sunday of the month, when typically there's family meditation. We have classes, retreats, and seminars and things like that on Zoom. So you'll need, again, like I said, to sign up for the newsletter. And then we also started movie nights, which was super fun. We had that just on Friday. So think about joining us for those also. And that is also on Zoom. So all the information you need, please sign up for the newsletter. Have a look at our website. If you're able to, please make a donation. It's so important. Even though we're not at our physical center, we still have to pay rent. We have to pay the utilities. We have to pay salaries, supplies, all kinds of things. So if you're not able, we understand it's a difficult economic time. But if you are able, please do. It's so beneficial to support the Dharma and to support this whole Songtsen Gampo Buddhist Center and the teachings and so forth, and the study, to keep that alive, not just for yourself, but for all beings, okay? All right, so thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really enjoyed these sessions with you, and I hope to see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.